So what if President Biden could make Russia pay for American military aid to Ukraine? Sounds impossible? Sounds crazy? Harvard Law professor Lawrence Tribe's latest New York Times op-ed is titled $100 billion Russia's treasure in the United States should be turned against Putin. Professor Tribe and Jeremy Lewin write, President Biden could liquidate the tens of billions of dollars the Russian central bank has parked in the United States as part of its foreign exchange reserves. By some estimates, those funds may total as much as $100 billion. Even if the Justice Department were able to sell every yacht and mansion it seizes over the coming months, earmarking the profits for military and humanitarian aid, the process would be too slow and the proceeds too insignificant to meet Ukraine's growing and urgent needs for tanks, anti-aircraft missiles, food, and medicine. Joining us now is Lawrence Tribe, University Professor of Constitutional Law Emeritus at Harvard Law School. He has won 35 cases in the United States Supreme Court. Professor Tribe, thank you very much for joining us tonight. So to clarify for the audience, this is a very common practice for foreign countries. They have massive amounts of American currency, dollars, basically parked in the United States to use as foreign exchange because the U.S. dollar is the major currency in world trade. And the Russian ruble isn't even on the list of currencies used for that. And so the United States already has possession of this $100 billion right now, don't they?
We do. We have frozen those assets. And given the savage, cruel, and illegal war that Vladimir Putin is waging against the Ukrainian people, there is no prospect that that money will ever be returned to him. No prospect that it will be unfrozen. And so I looked at the background law, and there's something called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. It was passed in 1977. It's been amended 7 or 8 times since. It's been used by Presidents Carter and Reagan and George H.W. Bush, Obama, and Trump. It's a bipartisan law, and its language, its explicit text in Section 1702A1B unambiguously authorizes the President of the United States, upon the declaration of a national emergency, which has been declared in this connection, to control and direct and compel any use of any foreign government property in the United States. Translated into simple language, that means turning these dollars into humanitarian and military aid, almost $100 billion. And in doing that, we could really show Vladimir Putin, quite apart from the desperate needs that this money would meet urgently, we could show Vladimir Putin how wrong he is in believing that the rule of law is obsolete, that it is our source of weakness, that democracies are doomed, and that only autocracies can succeed. You want to bet? What we can do is use the law, use it literally, to take the money we have already frozen, unfreeze it, and turn it in favor of the Ukrainian people and against the Russian Federation and its invading army. It would be poetic justice under the rule of law to do exactly that. And I'm urging the Biden administration to look closely into that legislative option. Doesn't need a new law passed by Congress, although new laws might help with respect to the yachts and the mansions held by the oligarchs. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The frozen part of the iceberg underneath is the huge treasure chest that Russia has parked in this country, and it would serve it right, and it would help the Ukrainian people for us to use it in a perfectly legal way. That's what I'm urging.
It is a bold choice, and in war, as weeks pass, often the bold choice becomes the choice of the day eventually. I can see where they're not there yet, but if this were to happen, does the law provide an opportunity for the Russian government to go into an American court and somehow protest this?
No. Our sovereign immunity is overcome by the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. They could go into court, they would be kicked out. But even if the doors of the court were opened, they would have no case because there is nothing illegal about this. It's authorized by our law. It's consistent with our Constitution. The rights of private individuals, of oligarchs, if you will, are not involved. Russia is not a person. Russia is a government, and these governments don't have rights under our Constitution. They have claims, but the claims are not going to be vindicated in an American court, even if the United States government were to waive its immunity, and I don't see why it should.
So to look at this from the other angle, where it's not so bold, is to say, look, the United States government has already frozen this money. The Russian government does not have access to it. They've lost their access to it. And your point is there's no real prospect in the future of the Russian government getting access to this again, given the atrocities that they have committed in Ukraine. So why not take the step right now to activate that money for the benefit of Ukraine, and framed that way, it doesn't look so radical.
Exactly. And it's kind of an atrocity to have the money just sitting there when it could be used to save lives, to feed people, to provide missiles, and without any burden, not a single bit of burden on American taxpayers. So that unlike the money that we are now sending, which will eventually find its way into the sort of amount the Treasury has to collect from American taxpayers or into our national debt, this money is conveniently provided for us by Russia. It sort of reminds you in an odd way of the idea of Mexico paying for the wall. This is Russia paying to push back against a completely illegal genocidal war that is utterly without justification. It's a perfect storm, and it really ought to be done.
Professor Laurence Tribe, thank you for joining us with this tonight. And in the eventuality that the White House doesn't watch this segment and decide to do it tomorrow, which I kind of doubt will happen, let's revisit this down the line in a couple of weeks, because I think as time passes, it becomes a riper and riper option. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.